Hollywood's golden age was a machine that manufactured gods and goddesses from flesh and blood. Towering movie posters and enormous silver screens projected flawless faces and sculpted bodies into American living rooms, feeding a nation's desire for perfection. The stars of this era were meant to embody ideals so precise and unattainable that even the most exceptional humans struggled to measure up. Yet, behind the glimmering facades of glamour, a hidden reality existed, a reality of bodies that struggled, suffered, and, in some cases, defied nature itself. In those years, the studio system's obsession with perfection was nearly pathological. A former MGM publicity director described it as a regime where appearance was as critical, if not more, than talent. Actors were expected to perform, not just on screen, but in their physical presence, matching an ideal so specific it bordered on the impossible. Any deviation from this blueprint of beauty or health, no matter how minor, could derail a promising career. This created a cruel paradox. Actors born with physical differences could initially stand out, yet once signed by a studio, these same features became liabilities requiring concealment, alteration, or extreme compensation. The lengths to which studios went to maintain their illusions were extraordinary. Publicity departments functioned almost like intelligence agencies, suppressing medical records, intimidating reporters, and creating entirely fictional life stories to match the image of the flawless star. Camera angles, lighting, wardrobe, and retouched photographs concealed deformities and medical conditions. Yet, whispers of the reality beneath these illusions circulated quietly through Hollywood. Special shoes, restrictive costumes, prosthetics, and even early surgical interventions shaped the bodies of stars to fit a manufactured ideal. Even those revered as embodiments of perfection often hid conditions that, if revealed, would have undermined their carefully constructed images. What makes these stories so poignant is that many of these actors delivered career-defining performances while simultaneously battling challenges the audience would never suspect. They were not only portraying characters on screen, they were performing normalcy itself, embodying physical perfection even as their bodies told a very different story. The 7 stars explored here illustrate the immense gap between Hollywood's manufactured perfection and the reality behind the curtain. Their stories are testaments to resilience, artistry, and the hidden costs of stardom. Robert Donat, the star, who struggled to breathe. Robert Donat's portrayal of the devoted schoolmaster in Goodbye, Mr. Chips, 1939, remains one of the most celebrated performances in cinematic history. Audiences were swept away by his ability to convey a lifetime of experience, moving seamlessly from youthful idealism to the quiet wisdom of age. His performance was marked by subtle gestures, measured expressions, and a deep emotional resonance that made the character feel vividly real. Yet, while viewers admired Donat's on-screen presence, they had no inkling of the immense physical challenges he faced off-camera. For Donat, every scene was not only an act of performance, but a daily battle against severe chronic asthma. In the 1930s and 1940s, asthma was a debilitating condition with limited medical remedies. Donat's attacks were unpredictable and could render him completely unable to speak, threatening the very instrument of his craft, his voice. Adding to this, he suffered from mild scoliosis, a curvature of the spine that subtly affected his posture and added further strain to the physical demands of acting. For most actors, such conditions would have made a sustained career nearly impossible. Yet Donat navigated these limitations with extraordinary resilience and ingenuity, aided by studios that went to great lengths to accommodate his needs. Shooting schedules were meticulously structured around his health. Scenes were filmed in fragments to allow for rest between takes, and emergency medical personnel were kept on standby during production. These measures allowed him to continue working at a high level, though they came at the cost of rejecting roles that might have otherwise elevated him to even greater stardom. Despite these physical obstacles, Donat developed an acting technique that turned limitation into strength. He employed a deliberate economy of movement, precise gestures, and controlled delivery. ensuring that every action and word carried weight without taxing his fragile body. This method created a performance style that was both understated and emotionally powerful, allowing him to convey depth and nuance in ways that might not have been possible for a physically unencumbered actor. Behind the scenes, studio publicity departments worked tirelessly to maintain the illusion of effortless health, attributing production delays to technical issues and selecting photographs to hide the subtle effects of scoliosis. Audiences were led to believe they were witnessing an actor whose vitality and poise were natural, completely unaware of the daily struggle that underpinned each frame. As Donat aged, his asthma intensified, further restricting his ability to work and limiting the scope of his career. By the early 1950s, he could only accept sporadic roles, and the physical demands of film production became increasingly burdensome. His life was tragically cut short in 1958 when he died at the age of 53, leaving behind a body of work that reflected not only extraordinary talent, but also incredible perseverance. Robert Donat's story is a testament to the hidden artistry of endurance. His greatest performance was not merely the characters he portrayed on screen, but the daily triumph over the frailty of his own body. Each scene he completed was, in itself, a masterclass in dedication, resilience, and the quiet courage required to sustain a career under extraordinary physical constraints. Jean Harlo, the platinum bombshell, sculpted by surgery. Jean Harlo's story illustrates the extreme lengths to which Hollywood studios went to manufacture beauty and marketability, revealing the human cost behind the glamour of the silver screen. While actors like Robert Donat contended with fragile health and the limitations of their own bodies, Harlo faced a different kind of challenge. Her natural features did not align with the rigid standards of feminine beauty imposed by the studio system. Born with a receding chin and a less pronounced jawline, her profile was considered insufficiently striking for the era's obsession with dramatic, memorable faces. In the early 1930s, as Harlo began her ascent in Hollywood, the studios determined that surgical intervention was necessary to transform her appearance into the kind of visual ideal audiences expected from a rising star. Before she had even turned 20, Harlo underwent procedures to reshape her jawline and chin. By contemporary standards, these interventions were primitive and experimental. Surgeons used early forms of facial augmentation that involved materials prone to shifting, infection, or long-term complications. These were not merely cosmetic adjustments, they were radical alterations designed to conform an individual's natural anatomy to the studio's exacting vision. For Harlo, this meant that the very foundation of her appearance was altered before she was fully established as an actress, setting the stage for a career built on a manufactured image rather than her unaltered self. Hollywood's machinery of image control extended far beyond the surgical table. Every photograph, publicity, still, and press release was carefully curated to present Harlo as the embodiment of innate perfection. Pre-surgical images were removed from circulation or heavily retouched, while studio publicists issued strict instructions to journalists, ensuring that no mention of her altered features ever reached the public. The narrative presented to audiences was one of natural glamour and effortless beauty, concealing the extensive interventions that underpinned her star persona. Harlo's jawline, sculpted through early cosmetic techniques, became a symbol of how Hollywood literally created its stars rather than discovering them. This manufactured perfection came with a personal cost. Friends and colleagues noted that Harlo struggled with the psychological dissonance between her natural appearance and the surgically perfected image that audiences adored. While she became a definitive sex symbol of the 1930s through films like Red Dust and Dinner at 8, she reportedly wrestled with insecurity and discomfort about the fact that her fame was tied to an artificially constructed physical ideal. Her situation reflects a broader pattern in early Hollywood in which young actresses were expected to submit to invasive alterations to meet the industry's visual standards, often at the expense of personal autonomy and self-esteem. Tragically, Harlo's life and career were cut short when she died of kidney failure at the age of 26. Though her time in the spotlight was brief, Her story established a precedent that would persist for decades. Hollywood would continue to mold and manipulate the physical appearances of its stars to create the illusion of flawless beauty. Jean Harlo's life serves as a stark reminder of the human cost behind the studio system's obsession with image, showing how the pursuit of cinematic perfection could overshadow natural talent, health, and individuality. Her legacy, both brilliant and tragic, underscores the pressures faced by young actors and the enduring influence of Hollywood's manufactured ideals. Peter Lorre, transforming difference into art. Peter Lorre's career presents a fascinating study in the ways Hollywood handled physical difference, standing in sharp contrast to stars like Robert Donat and Jean Harlo, whose bodies or features were concealed or surgically altered to conform to rigid studio standards. Born with bulging eyes and noticeable facial asymmetry, Lorre possessed characteristics that many studios might have considered obstacles to mainstream stardom. Yet, rather than hiding or correcting these features, he transformed them into defining elements of his screen identity. His distinctive appearance became inseparable from the characters he portrayed, creating an aura of intensity, unease, and psychological complexity that captivated audiences and directors alike. Films such as M. Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon illustrate how Lorre's unique physical traits enhanced his performances, allowing him to inhabit roles with a dramatic depth that might have been inaccessible to conventionally attractive actors. Medical historians have suggested that Lorre may have suffered from exophthalmos, a condition in which the eyes protrude, often associated with thyroid dysfunction. This condition contributed to his extraordinary presence, giving his gaze an intensity that became a signature element of his performances. Unlike many contemporaries who were pressured to undergo surgical procedures or cosmetic interventions to meet Hollywood's exacting standards, Lorre embraced his natural appearance. He deliberately incorporated his facial asymmetry and expressive eyes into his acting technique, using these features to convey tension, unease, or vulnerability in ways that words alone could not achieve. Directors quickly recognized the value of Lorre's unconventional appearance. The dramatic energy it provided could not be replicated by more traditionally attractive performers, making him indispensable for complex and often morally ambiguous characters. However, this very distinctiveness came with professional limitations. Lorre was largely confined to supporting roles, villains, or psychologically intense figures rarely considered for romantic leads or heroic parts. His success was inseparable from his difference, but the same qualities that made him unforgettable also restricted the scope of his career. Lorre's experience highlights a broader Hollywood double standard. Male actors could, on rare occasions, convert unconventional physical traits into dramatic assets, whereas female actors were overwhelmingly pressured to conform to idealized standards of beauty, often through surgery or makeup. Despite these constraints, Peter Lorre transformed what could have been perceived as limitations into enduring artistic strengths. His career demonstrates that embracing physical difference can create a distinctive, memorable screen presence and elevate performances to extraordinary levels. Through his ability to turn perceived flaws into defining characteristics, Lorre created an enduring legacy, proving that Hollywood's rigid standards could never fully contain true talent. His life and work remain a testament to the creative potential of embracing what others might consider imperfections. Edward G. Robinson, Defying Convention with Talent. Edward G. Robinson's career offers a remarkable example of how talent and presence can transcend Hollywood's rigid beauty standards. Born with a wide face, prominent forehead, and unconventional facial proportions, Robinson might easily have been excluded from leading man status in an industry obsessed with classical attractiveness. In the studio system of the 1930s and 1940s, physical appearance often determined the roles an actor could pursue, with romantic leads reserved for those who fit an idealized template of handsomeness. Yet, Robinson refused to be constrained by these superficial limitations. Instead, he leveraged his distinctive features to redefine the archetype of the Hollywood leading man, creating roles that remain iconic nearly a century later. Robinson's talent was evident in his ability to transform what might have been perceived as obstacles into tools of characterization. Film historians suggest that his facial structure may have been influenced by a mild form of craniofacial dysplasia, a congenital condition affecting skull and facial development. While this condition made him unsuitable for traditional romantic leads, Robinson's presence, intensity, and command of the screen allowed him to carve out a new category of leading man, one defined not by adherence to conventional beauty, but by power, authority, and memorability. His performances in Little Caesar, Double Indemnity, and Key Largo exemplify this transformation. In each role, his wide face, expressive eyes, and prominent forehead amplified the emotional depth and psychological complexity of the characters he portrayed. Robinson's skill extended beyond his physical appearance. His precise diction, natural charisma, and meticulous attention to craft ensured that audiences focused on his artistry rather than his unconventional features. Directors and co-stars recognized his capacity to dominate a scene through sheer performance, turning what might have been a career limitation into a defining strength. Over a 5-decade career, he became one of Hollywood's most respected and recognizable actors, demonstrating that talent, dedication, and presence could overcome the superficial constraints imposed by the studio system. In this way, Edward G. Robinson serves as a testament to the power of artistry over appearance. While the industry often prioritized looks over skill, he proved that expressive talent, professionalism, and commitment to craft could create a legacy far more enduring than conformity to physical ideals. Robinson's career remains a model of how unconventional features, when paired with extraordinary talent, can redefine cinematic norms and leave an indelible mark on Hollywood history. Frances Farmer, Tragedy Behind the Glamour. Frances Farmer's story stands as one of the most harrowing examples of Hollywood's cruelty toward those who did not conform to its rigid standards of physical and psychological perfection. From the beginning, Farmer faced challenges that would affect her entire life. Born with a cranial abnormality, she underwent surgical interventions as an infant in the early 1910s. While intended to correct immediate physical concerns, these procedures may have caused lasting neurological consequences, including chronic migraines and mood disturbances. At a time when medical understanding of neurological development was limited, these early interventions set the stage for lifelong struggles that the industry was ill-equipped to accommodate. When Farmer arrived in Hollywood in the 1930s, she quickly became recognized for her remarkable talent and screen presence. Yet behind the glamour, the pressures of the studio system were relentless. Strict adherence to schedules and an image of perfection both on and off camera. Farmer's underlying neurological and psychological issues frequently interfered with her ability to meet these unrealistic demands. Episodes of debilitating migraines or emotional volatility were interpreted not as legitimate medical concerns, but as evidence of being difficult or unprofessional. Her very humanity was treated as a liability, a deviation from the narrow behavioral and physical norms the studios imposed. The culmination of these pressures was tragic. Rather than receiving medical care tailored to her needs, Farmer faced increasingly punitive interventions. She was involuntarily institutionalized and eventually subjected to a lobotomy, a procedure that permanently damaged her brain and ended her career. The studios, more concerned with maintaining the illusion of control and perfection, failed to provide the support she required. Her story illustrates the darkest consequences of an industry that prioritized appearance, image, and marketability over the health and well-being of its performers. Frances Farmer's life is a sobering testament to Hollywood's ruthless obsession with conformity. It reveals how physical and psychological differences, rather than being accommodated or respected, could be punished with devastating consequences. Her tragic trajectory serves as a stark reminder of the human cost behind the glamour of the silver screen and the profound dangers of a system that values perfection above compassion, understanding, or care. Raymond Burr, Concealing a Limp. Raymond Burr, best known for his commanding television roles as Perry Mason and Robert Ironside, represents a striking example of how Hollywood managed physical differences behind the scenes while maintaining the illusion of perfection on screen. Despite projecting an image of unwavering strength and authority, Burr reportedly had one leg shorter than the other, a congenital condition or childhood injury that created a noticeable limp. In an industry obsessed with flawless appearances, such a physical difference could have undermined his ability to secure leading roles, particularly characters defined by their physical presence and dominance. Yet Burr's career demonstrates how studios and production teams could employ technical ingenuity to conceal these differences while allowing a star to perform at the highest level. To accommodate Burr's condition, production teams implemented an array of carefully planned strategies. Custom shoes with lifts were designed to equalize leg length, ensuring a more balanced gait when he walked. Set designs and camera angles were meticulously arranged to minimize the visibility of his limp, with furniture placement and blocking used to naturally obscure his movements. On rare occasions when his physical difference might have been noticeable, filming techniques such as tight framing, seated shots, or tracking shots were employed to maintain the illusion of symmetry. Burr himself cooperated fully with these arrangements, treating the concealment as a professional necessity rather than a personal embarrassment. These combined efforts allowed audiences to experience the characters he portrayed without distraction, preserving the integrity of the narrative while protecting Burr's career from scrutiny. Interestingly, Burr's limitation became entirely irrelevant in his role as Ironside, a wheelchair-bound detective. The show's premise naturally accommodated his leg difference, eliminating the need for concealment, while simultaneously aligning with his authoritative on-screen presence. Outside of that context, however, Burr's career exemplifies a common philosophy among male stars of his era. Physical differences were problems to be solved through practical measures, not matters to be publicly acknowledged or discussed. He maintained strict privacy about his condition, reflecting a broader Hollywood tendency to separate the star's public persona from the private realities of their body. Burr's success illustrates both the ingenuity and secrecy of Hollywood production practices. His meticulously concealed limp allowed him to cultivate a long, enduring career defined by authority, intelligence, and charisma. While audiences saw only the carefully curated image, the reality of his physical difference remained invisible. Burr's story underscores the extent to which the industry prioritized perception over reality, demonstrating how technical skill, strategic planning, and personal discipline could allow actors to thrive despite physical limitations. Marlene Dietrich, Hidden Perfection. Marlene Dietrich, the German-born Hollywood icon, exemplifies the meticulous control over image that defined the golden age of cinema. Celebrated for her striking beauty, flawless style, and commanding screen presence, Dietrich projected an aura of perfection that captivated audiences worldwide. Yet behind this carefully constructed image lay a minor but closely guarded secret. She had partially webbed toes, a subtle physical difference that, by modern standards, would be considered inconsequential. In the perfection-obsessed culture of Hollywood at the time, however, even such a trivial anomaly demanded concealment to maintain the illusion of flawlessness. Dietrich and her team employed a variety of strategies to ensure that her imperfection remained invisible to the public. Shoe choices were carefully planned, with closed-toe designs preferred whenever possible, even in situations where sandals or open footwear might have been appropriate. Wardrobe and costume decisions were tailored to obscure any possibility of revealing the webbing, and careful attention was paid to her positioning on set to control what cameras could capture. Photographers and directors collaborated to reinforce the carefully curated image, ensuring that every public appearance, film scene, and publicity photograph aligned with the narrative of perfection that Dietrich and the studios cultivated. The lengths to which Dietrich went to conceal such a minor difference illustrate the intense psychological pressure imposed by Hollywood's impossible standards. Stars were not merely performers. They were marketed as embodiments of an idealized beauty that could never show cracks or deviations. Dietrich's webbed toes, while functionally irrelevant, became a symbol of the broader culture of secrecy than by conformity to a manufactured ideal. Despite the trivial nature of her imperfection, Dietrich's management of her image was masterful. She maintained near total control over how she was seen throughout her life, ensuring that the illusion of perfection endured even as she aged. Her webbed toes, though largely invisible to the public during her lifetime, serve as a poignant metaphor for Hollywood's obsession with control. Even the smallest deviations from the ideal were unacceptable and had to be carefully managed. In this way, Dietrich's story highlights not only the extreme pressures faced by stars, but also the psychological toll of sustaining an image of unblemished perfection in a world that valued illusion over reality. The hidden costs of Hollywood perfection. These 7 stars, Robert Donat, Jean Harlo, Peter Lorre, Edward G. Robinson, Francis Farmer, Raymond Burr, and Marlene Dietrich, offer a striking window into how Hollywood's golden age navigated physical difference. Each faced a unique set of challenges, yet their experiences collectively reveal the stark reality behind the studio system's obsession with perfection. For some, like Donat and Harlo, the body itself was a battleground. Donat contended with severe chronic asthma and mild scoliosis, enduring physical torment daily while delivering performances that appeared effortless to audiences. Harlo, by contrast, was subjected to invasive surgical alterations designed to reshape her natural features, turning her body into a manufactured ideal demanded by the studios. Despite the immense pressures, all 7 displayed extraordinary resilience. Donat adapted his technique to accommodate his health. Lorre and Robinson embraced their distinctive appearances. Burr and Dietrich mastered secrecy and technical manipulation. And Harlo endured surgical transformations while achieving fame. Their stories demonstrate that the artistry of Hollywood extended far beyond performance. It encompassed ingenuity, courage, and an unyielding dedication to sustaining an illusion of perfection. Ultimately, the Golden Age's celebrated glamour was a carefully constructed facade. Physical ideals were curated, imperfections hidden, and human vulnerability masked. Yet, through the cracks in this manufactured perfection, the humanity of these stars emerged. Their courage, adaptability, and artistry not only sustained their careers, but also created enduring legacies that continue to captivate, inspire, and reveal the profound complexities of Hollywood's golden age.